what I really wanted, and just to give a little background, I think we all here share a goal of a fully electric MBTA. I've introduced a bill with Representative Barber from Somerville for that I think some of my colleagues have signed on to, and I've had a lot of conversations with the MBTA over the year about the electrification plan. And as part of that, of course, why we're here tonight is we learned about the potential to move those trackless trolleys that serve the 71 and the 73 out of the North Cambridge garage, away from being powered directly from the catenary wires towards being powered by onboard batteries. So we've had a lot of conversations back and forth with the MBTA, but what I really wanted is to give people an opportunity to hear directly from the T, from the folks at the T, what their thinking is right now, how that'll impact the riders of the 71 and the 73. And so I'd really appreciate it if folks stick their comments and their questions rather to those issues. I know I'm sure everybody here has a long list of things that they'd like to talk to the T about, but let's just make sure to keep it to the 71 and 73, so because I know we have only an hour of time tonight, and I'm taking it up by with these introductory remarks. So I will leave it at that, unless Senator Brownsberger, Rep. Rogers, if you have any remarks to make now, I'm happy to pass the baton. Otherwise, I'll pass it directly to Angel.
Steve, I just want to say I appreciate you organizing this. I appreciate the MBTA coming out. I'm actually really grateful for the direction the T is trying to move in, and I look forward to the presentation tonight.
All right. Yeah. Oh. And I would echo what Senator Brownsberger said. Appreciate this opportunity for the folks who live in my community to learn more about the plan, have a chance to ask questions, and have a conversation about the issue. So thanks for organizing this, and I look forward to it. And always, of course, happy to be here with my colleagues, and also I noticed Senator Jehlen as well. So thank you.
I'm just going to say ditto to both Brownsberger and Reps Owens and Rogers. Thank you all for having this.
Well, thank you. And with that, I want to introduce Angel Donahue Rodriguez, who's a Deputy Chief of Staff at the MBTA, and he is going to be giving the presentation. And I think you can now share your screen if I stop sharing mine. Let me know if that works for you.
Bear with me one sec. Even after a year and a half of doing this, I'm still learning every day. Here we go. All right. Can people see my screen?
Yes, I can.
I'm gonna put this into. Forgive me. Oh, why is it doing that? All right. So can people can see the screen? Excellent. All right. So as the rep said, and the members of the delegation, I'm happy to be here, and we work really collaboratively, I think, with delegation, not just on these issues, but many others, on day transactional issues that come through to the T, as there are plenty of those, as I'm sure many of you can attest. And I'm really excited to kind of show a little bit of an overview of what our fleet plan is and how we plan on electrifying our network, and some of the challenges that we have, and then get into a little bit of specificity about the North Cambridge garage, and how that fits into our overall plan, and then leave enough time for questions. My presentation is very short. I will not be going for more than 5 minutes. I promise you. It's 7 slides, which for our sake at the T is not a lot of slides on some of the presentations that we typically do. So I intentionally kept it brief, so that we can hear from folks out in the community. So a little bit about the agenda. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about our fleet in our facility strategy, our priorities, which right now are Quincy and Arbor Way. Arbor Way in particular, as it serves a significant population of low-income folks in those communities. And then I'll talk a little bit about the North Cambridge garage retrofit, the current status, and then take some questions from folks. So our fleet and facility goals, there's 4 of them that we're trying to achieve as an organization. And the first one of that is to convert the entire fleet, as the rep and other members of the delegation mentioned, to fully electric battery buses and zero emission technology. And that is all part of the Commonwealth's carbon reduction goals, which the legislature has passed a climate change bill over the last year, and how that fits into that, into those legislative goals. The second part of our goal is to modernize all of our fleets and maintenance facilities, because we can't really provide the electric battery buses or the technology to be able to do those things if we don't have the facilities to be able to support them. And then the third is to transition to a more uniform and homogeneous fleet. And the reason for that, there are a couple, but I'll share a few with you here, as you can see in the presentation. The one is a more homogeneous and uniform fleet will allow us to be able to support more reliability for our passengers, and just give us a little bit more predictability from a budget perspective when we do maintenance. And then the third, and I would say for me, this is one I tend to emphasize quite a bit, is to increase our fleet size. We know that there is strong demand even during the pandemic. At the height of the pandemic, bus was our most durable form of transportation service that we provided at the T, and we expect that to continue. Currently, ridership on bus is about 55% of its pre-COVID ridership, which is higher than any of the other forms of services that we provide. And we expect that to continue going forward. So there's not many times you get an opportunity to do these massive investments in our fleet, in our facilities. And so what we're trying to do is to make sure that we also build out for the future. And so the fleet and facility initial priorities here, the first one is out in Quincy. I have gone and visited this facility with the general manager. We've talked to several members of the workforce there, and we've seen the working conditions. And so we want to make sure that we don't hinder our workers' ability to be able to properly maintain those facilities. And the reality is, right now, that entire area is serviced by, I believe they're serviced by all diesel buses. And so those buses are due to be replaced. They're 12 to 15 years old, which is beyond their useful life. And so even if we wanted to with this current facility there, we wouldn't be able to supply hybrid buses in that facility. And so the facility is just not big enough. And so we are moving as expeditiously as possible to build a new facility that's going to put 120 new buses, and then phase in as we're able to by 2025 to have an all battery electric facility and buses in that area.
Hey, Angel.
Yeah.
Just real quick, interrupting. If there's some things are popping up in the chat that for some reason people are not able to see the slides as well. I'm not sure whether that's something about their viewing or they look okay from here, but if there's a way to make them bigger, that's what people have seemed to be asking.
Oh, okay.
Or if there's a link to them, you could put that in the chat so that.
Yeah.
Lori says slides view, please.
Yeah, it looks like you're in presenter view. It may be under display settings. You can change that.
Yeah, give me 1 sec. Is that better?
Oh,
Or no?
well, now it's
I'm seeing
gone.
2 screens. Bear with me 1 sec. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'm going to
While you do that, Angel, I'm gonna just restart my own Zoom session here, which is having a little bit of
that's
problems.
not a problem. Bear with me 1 sec. I told you that even after 18 months, the struggle is real on figuring this out.
So, and if you want to, at the end of this, you can email the slides to me and I'll make sure they
Yep.
get disseminated.
Yep, they've already been
for-
shared with your office rep.
Oh, great.
Yep, so that should, hold on, Rep, can you see my slides?
I don't see anything anymore.
Okay, hold on one sec. What about now?
Yes, that looks a little bit
Is
better.
that,
Yeah.
is that better for folks?
Yeah, it's, we still see the whole, the PowerPoint, but I think this is, if this works better for people, just give a thumbs up in the
Yeah,
chat or
if
something like
this
that.
is working better for people, let me know.
Yeah, I think
Apologies
this will
about
be
that.
fine.
Yeah, I just hit the bigger screen. I figured it would be easier for folks to see, so.
Yeah, I know we can still see the
we'll take it
margin
from
notes,
there.
but if we can, but I think this is probably,
That's
I
fine,
think this
we'll
will-
go with
it-
this.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Apologies about that. So where we left off. So our fleet and facilities and our next priorities, as I mentioned earlier, at the T, we take a lot of the things that we do through an equity lens, and we recognize that that it is an imperative for our organization to make sure that we're doing right by certain EJ communities and certain populations. And so our next project is the new Arbor Way Garage. And this Arbor Way Garage was built in 2004. It was originally designed to be a temporary facility that housed our CNG buses. And just to give you a snapshot of the population that we serve out of here, 55% of the population that this facility serves are people of color and 35% of households of low income. And so our CNG fleet is due to be replaced by 2028/29. And so we're looking to build a 200 bus maintenance facility that will house 40 and 60-foot buses that serve that critical population in that area. Next, I'm going to talk, the next two slides, I'm going to talk about the North Cambridge retrofit and how that's part of our overall strategy. So the North Cambridge facility is the smallest out of all of our garages. It houses about 28 buses on site. And right now it does not have the capability, as many of you know, to be able to house BEB buses. Right now it does hold electric trolley buses, which are due to be replaced. They're about 17 to 18 years old, which after 14 years, it's beyond its useful life. There has been a confluence of events that have kind of led us to this kind of moment. There's several projects along the route that these trolley buses operate on that just kind of by happenstance kind of not force the MBTA, but force us to kind of strategically think about how we retrofit and why we're retrofitting that facility. And so there's some projects with the city of Cambridge, the town of Watertown, the MWRA, and National Grid. And so we are looking to retrofit this facility to eventually house battery electric buses. But in order to do that, we're going to have to take down the catenary at some point, and it's going to require us to be able to use hybrid buses for a particular period of time until this facility is retrofitted. And so as you can see here, this is a bit of the timeline and next steps. And so the preliminary design is underway, and that the design of it is fully funded, but the construction is something that we're going to be seeking full funding on in the FY23 CIP. And just a little bit of the timeline here, we expect that planned construction will be completed by December of 2023. So again, this is an evolving situation, but that's just a very general look of where we're at with the project in North Cambridge. And with that, that's my presentation, and happy to yield the floor back to the rep who's graciously moderating, and happy to take some questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yeah, I guess just to start out with, I want to make it a little just clear that none of the battery buses have been procured at this point. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Rep, could you repeat that question?
Oh, I'm sorry. none of the battery electric buses have been procured at this point, though they're all kind of the
No, no.
Nothing- and-
My understanding of the specs are being developed, but the only battery electric buses that we have on fleet are through a federal grant, a low no emission grant that we got, which are buses on the Silver Line that are being tested. Those are only battery electric buses that are currently part of our fleet.
And have there been any decisions made about the style of the electric buses at this time? About what have there been any? Because I know that we had some talk about buses that required an external heater or cooling over just to prolong the batteries, the drivetrain battery's life. Is that still something that has yet to be decided, or is that not?
That's still an evolving conversation internally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, we'll move. We have a couple questions on the Q&A. We'll go through, and then once we've gone through that, we will we'll move on to the live Q&A. So a question that has gone, it looks like there's a couple folks that are very interested in, that was answered. Yeah, there are a couple questions about the potential for these diesel heaters. And if that is something that has either A, been decided, or B, been studied as to how they would be used, if they would be used, and what the emissions profile of those heaters would be.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I don't know what the emissions profile exactly is on those particular heaters. I know it's been a subject of conversation, and those specs are still being worked out with our vehicle maintenance and engineering teams. But I know that it is a subject, an interesting subject for a lot of folks, in a subject of interest.
And just to follow up on that a little bit, no procurement decision has been made about a particular design or anything like that on the
yeah, no, specs are still in development at the moment. Yeah,
Okay.
but the potential 35 buses that would be coming that way are funded. The only thing that's not funded out of this plan is the actual retrofit of the facility, which is funding that we plan on seeking in the FY23 SIP.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the 35 new buses are funded?
They're funded. Yeah, they're funded.
They're funded, but they're funded, but not procured.
But they've not been procured. So the money's there. We just haven't, those specs are still being developed by our engineering team.
And has that been put out to bid yet, or has that not been put out to bid? Okay, so it hasn't even been put out to bid. So it's still an open question about what form of electric buses these new buses would be. Okay. Yeah.
It's just the only thing that when I say that is we've committed to fund it in our capital improvement plan.
And Joe Lewandowski asks whether how large the fleet will be once it's expanded. I think you said 35.
For this particular garage.
Yeah. Is that what you said?
35. Yeah.
Okay.
And that's compared to 28 now.
And okay, so let me go through these. The next set of questions are basically about replacing the zero emissions trolley buses with also, even with, let's assume that they do have the diesel heaters with slightly less than zero emission battery electric buses. We just passed, thanks to the work of Senator Brownsberger's and Senators Brownsberger and Jehlen and Rep Rogers, the climate roadmap bill. How does the switch of this already electric fleet help with those goals?
Well, this is just part of a larger plan. So the MBTA is planning on replacing our entire fleet. And I'm sure many of you know that transportation obviously has contributed a fair amount of emissions that have contributed to climate change. And so by having a comprehensive plan that replaces and increases our fleet to more to a battery electric fleet, that's how it reaches that goal. Right now, there are about 1,200 buses that we have within our fleet, and we're looking to expand that. But it's just one of those things that's just going to take time because right now our fleet is not homogeneous. So
the MBTA's contention is that creating a more homogeneous fleet allows for more flexibility. Is that where you're getting at, or is it?
yeah, it allows
Okay.
for more flexibility and from a maintenance perspective and from a budgetary perspective as well. I'm a bit of an airline buff, and so the example that I'll use here is that you look at like an airline like Southwest Airlines, they have a homogeneous fleet. So the reason they do that is because it allows for easier training and it allows for more predictable ability for their maintenance folks to work on that equipment. So something similar to that effect would transfer over to the MBTA.
Okay, and thank you for that. There was another question about the battery electric bus technology on the Silver Line. So if those are the batteries, those are the BEBs we already have. How is that going? What results of that pilot program so far?
That's something I'm gonna have to get back to you on. I was not prepped to talk exactly on Silver Line.
I will. To be fair, you brought it up, so I can't.
I did, but I only mentioned that just as a totality of the fleet, not the specifics of that program. But I'm happy to get back to you with an answer on that, and we can debrief after.
All right, great. There's another question about whether, and I'm not sure if you may not be but if there's somebody else in the audience who can answer this one, I will raise your hand and I'll call on you. If the municipal projects or the utility projects that we're anticipating, if they all require that the trolley bus routes be replaced with non-trolley buses.
I'm sorry, you broke up there.
I'm sorry. So this is a question about the utility work that's being done. Is the utility work and the road projects that are being done, is that going to require taking the wires down or turning off the wires?
It's going to require
the whole time.
The wires. Throughout the whole length of that, because those are live wires. So for the safety of the crew, and safety is our top priority for the people that are working on our system and our riders, we're gonna have to de-energize the wires overhead.
And my understanding is that when the work was done on the Belmont Street and Trapello Road corridor, that was a similar situation where the wires had to be taken down and the work being done. And the work on the Mount Auburn Street corridor is, my understanding, going to be of a similar scale to what was done there. Although the exact, I don't want to scare anybody with if they're not happy with what happened in Trapello Road in Watertown, but because those designs aren't final yet. But that's my understanding.
It'll require us to de-energize or take the catenary down. But yeah.
Okay. All right, that one has been answered. Will the replacement buses have left side doors like the current trolley buses due to the importance of that in the bus tunnel?
That is something that is still in conversation as part of our specs with our engineering team. So that stuff's still in design.
Okay, still in design. They're asking for your contact information if you want to have somebody put that in the chat for you, if you're comfortable with that.
I'm sorry, say that again.
There was a question asking for your contact info. And I can either have people reach you through me, or if you're comfortable having your email in the chat, you can put it in there. Up to you.
I'm happy to chat with whomever. So you can go ahead and give them my contact info. You can give them my email. That's fine.
Okay. Emerson, why don't you put that in the chat for everybody? All right. So having Has the MBTA conducted an analysis of the trade-offs of proceeding with the garage overhauls versus waiting, using the savings to invest in electrification elsewhere, and then using in-motion charging for the current, to replace the current trolley buses? And how much did it cost in 2015 to replace the Trapello wires? I think that last question is not maybe something that you would have the answer to, but the first question of the pros and cons of changing the fleet now versus later is something that maybe you'll have some insight into.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll take it from the back, and I'll have to repeat some of that question because there were a couple parts there. But on the cost on the Trapello Abbott, I do not know the cost of that. I believe that there was an analysis done, but it's happening. It's not complete yet. On those particular costs. And what I will say around the in-motion charging, and I hear that argument and I understand it. That is something that I would say that, keeping in mind that our goal here, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, we need to have a homogeneous fleet, and so that is a really critical part of our strategic plan. And so I know that that's a bit of a interesting conversation with many folks, the in-motion charging, but that's not something that I'm aware of at the moment. We are going into. So, but again, those are conversations that are happening internally because a lot of these things are still in design and they haven't gone out for procurement yet.
Okay, we have a question from Councilor Angie Kunellis from Watertown. Is interested in the passenger capacity of the battery buses versus what we currently use.
I'm not aware of there being a change per se in the capacity. So I'll give you an example of what our buses have now. So a standard 40-foot bus would fit anywhere between 40 to 60 people. Once you start getting up toward that range of 55 to 60, we would consider that crowded. There's certain things that based on the design that could impact whether you're able to have 5 or more people in there. On a 60-foot bus, obviously you can fit more people. You're probably looking at the high end around 80 people that you can fit into a bus. And again, a lot of those things are kind of bus designs can be somewhat standard. And so that kind of limits, depending on the design of the bus, how many extra people you can put in. But it's pretty standard for a 40 and a 60-foot bus to house anywhere between 40 to 80 people on both those types of length buses. And I'm not aware of BB buses there being any less or more people in those buses. It's probably about the same.
Let's see.
I will make a plug though about this though. I will say this. One of the things that I think is critically important, and I know you've been an advocate for in other members of the delegation is more bus lanes. And so our ability to be able to have better throughput would decrease crowding in providing that additional flexibility for the T would minimize people getting up to the higher end of 60 or 80 people on a 60-foot bus. So
well, let's talk a little bit about the throughput then, because that leads into another question that that someone had here. And if there are more buses and if we can get better throughput, does that mean we have a sense of these buses, assuming that they don't need the wires, that these buses would be able to serve other routes out of that North Cambridge garage? Because we're talking about moving from 28 to 35, and we're talking about maybe having a either more bus lanes or skip lanes or something, some bus priority signals. Is there a sense that we could do that with if we switched out?
I guess in a sense, yes, right. But what I would say is I would invite folks tomorrow to check out our Better Bus project and bus network redesign open house, where we're actually going through a pretty transformational change at the T, where we're redesigning all of our bus routes. And so I would encourage folks to check that out. And if you have particular suggestions or opinions about it, there will be breakout rooms that can talk and get into more detail about how better improve the bus network. So that's where I would leave that.
There was a question from Councilor Palumbo from Watertown about what you mean by a hybrid diesel bus.
So it would be essentially half of a hybrid diesel bus is half of the bus essentially ends up having or can run in diesel. The other part you can certain parts you can turn it off and run it as a battery electric bus. So it's not a fully electric bus.
And how long does it, how far can that go as an electric?
I'm not sure.
Okay, but is that's more like a Prius where I can turn it to an electric mode and I can go 12 miles an hour like I'm running a golf cart, or is that like an actual?
In essence, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Senator Brownsberger, I saw you pop back in on camera. Did you have something you wanted to add? Okay.
I will say I was just kind of looking at my notes on the Silver Line on battery. It could probably run about 2 miles on batteries.
Okay. I had a correction about the question I asked before about how large, the question that Joe Lewandowski had was how large the entire fleet system will be, not just the battery buses. Or not just the North Cambridge system.
That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that specifically. I know that we're obviously increasing it. I mean, we're going from 118 and 1 to 200. So that's a tough one to answer. Just simply because not all garages are the same size. For example, the Charlestown garage already has like, I think 250 buses in it. So if we're going to expand that, it's just I don't have an answer for that at the moment, but it will be bigger. Definitely north of 1,200. You can probably put your money on that.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. How many miles was that? What I saw
you asked about how long a battery bus can run, and I said right now on the Silver Line they think that they could run about 2 miles on battery, and remember those are 60-foot buses.
Right.
Yeah. What we'd be talking about here, I think, are all 40-foot buses, so less energy.
Okay. The question again, I think we mostly addressed this, but there was a question about the electric buses using any sort of in-road or onboard charging, and that, my understanding from what you said earlier, is that has not been decided yet.
That is not. No, that is not. Again, that's still in spec.
Okay.
That has not totally been decided. But
so that
I will refer.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Please.
No, I was just going to say that just goes back to the comment I made earlier about making sure that we have a homogeneous fleet. I am not aware of depending on the type of bus that we choose to do here. I'm not aware of in-motion charging being the type of thing that our organization would do, just because it would limit our ability to have a homogeneous fleet. But again, that decision is still being determined, and it is part of the spec discussion that we're currently having with our engineers.
Sure. I know that the in-motion charging is a little more complicated because it requires more catenary, which seems like a difficult ask for the municipalities, knowing that what I know about the catenary here. That would be more, but things like in route charging, like they have in the Holyoke, the Pioneer Valley is using the Holyoke to Springfield electric bus that they have, where they just have, a charger at the beginning and a charger at the end. That sort of thing allow for more homogeneity, or is that still going to be does a T still consider that something that's not feasible for a large?
It might not be. It's a combination of scalability and whether we, again, as you alluded, whether it can be homogeneous. We can run the current routes that we have now that run out of the North Cambridge garage without having to have in-motion charging. I would say, some people have made comparisons around the Dayton, Ohio, and other transit agencies that have in-motion charging. What I would say is they have a very different system than we do. They have hundreds of miles of overhead catenary. We have about 20. And so our ability to be able to add to that, to be able to run that kind of equipment would require conversations with municipalities, and that's not necessarily sometimes it's a very difficult conversation to have. And just to be frank, and it would require just an additional layer of cooperation with municipalities because we don't own the streets.
Okay, so there's a question about the arborway design, if that also has funding and for design and construction. Is the arborway project, is that ready to go?
It has design funding, I believe, up to 30%, but I don't believe it has. It does not have construction funding yet, but it is something we are moving forward with. Sorry, yeah. Then the design is not final yet. These are we're moving as quickly as we can, but there's other things that we need to figure out on that site first. We are scoping it, and we're I don't think we're even at 15% design yet.
Okay, that Dayton has been answered. There were questions definitely about whether there is concern that the fleet in the winter, given the challenges of running a cold weather battery bus fleet, whether we would need to have more buses, a bigger fleet for the same amount of traffic for winter use. Is that, and I'm sure that that's something that T has thought of, but what is
We're thinking about that.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Those are obviously things that we have to take into consideration when evaluating different technologies as customer comfort, right? You don't want a bus that's gonna be cold when you're riding it. You don't want a bus that's hot when you're also riding it during the summer. So that is something that is when our engineering team is designing the specs of a particular bus, that's one of the many things that components that we take a look at.
Okay, and
yeah,
just to follow through on the comfort level for the buses that require the diesel heaters, do those also require diesel for cooling, or does the cooling have less of a draw on the battery, or is that a question you're not prepared to answer this time?
That one I'm gonna have to get back to you on.
Okay,
and we
so
can
no, I get it. Yeah. So I think that's, the question of the extra diesel being used for heating and or cooling is something that folks are really concerned about, and it's coming up, multiple times in the questions. I see there's 41 open questions and they keep coming. So yeah. I had hoped to do some live questions, but we'll since people,
let's keep going with these. It's fine.
Since people have used these, we'll keep using the Q&A. There was a question about the cost of building the North Cambridge garage.
I want to say it's 18 to 20 million to retrofit it. Yeah, that's about the price for that. Yeah.
Right. Great. And speaking of garages, are there any plans to use the Watertown yard right across from Watertown Square? Are there any plans to use that for either for this project or for anything?
Not at this time.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Somebody does point out about Southwest Airlines and the homogeneous fleet.
Someone enjoyed
was the 737 Max.
Yeah, yeah. They have like 3 different variations that they use on the 737. Okay. Yeah.
But along those lines, is there a risk in having a homogeneous bus fleet if we have a situation where, let's say that God forbid there's a technical problem or the recall for one of these buses or something like that? Are we putting all of our eggs in one basket?
I would say no. This is something that we're our engineering team does a lot of testing that's involved before anything even goes out for passenger service. I'll use the red and orange line vehicles. There's a lot of testing that goes out. There's like 3,000 miles of burnout time, right? And so there's an intensive testing that we go through, and our partners that we work with on these buses are very responsive when we need something. So we have a our maintenance teams are top of the line. So I I guess you could say there's an inherent risk in everything, but I think it outweighs the benefits that as an organization are part of our strategy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, we do have some more questions about that. I mean, is there any other large transit authority that has a homogeneous bus fleet? Is this a standard, or is this something that we would be an outlier on? Do you have a sense of that?
I don't have a full sense of that. And that's a great question, and certainly a fair one. What I would say is that, there's a time to make good comparisons for our organization compared to other transit agencies. We have a very unique system here. And we have the oldest transit system in the country. So our roads are different. Our needs are different. And so what might work for us might not work for someone else. So that's what I would particularly say on that, but I'm not aware of, and that's something I'd have to look at myself, exactly the type of homogeneous fleet that other transit agencies have.
There was a question about presuming that the team moves forward with diesel heaters, things like that. Whether that will be stored in North Cambridge, whether there'll need to be some infrastructure change to deliver diesel fuel to that facility.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
I'm gonna have to get back.
but there's no, and I haven't been there over there, and I don't know if Representative Rogers knows the answer to this, given that it's across the street from where you live, or down the street from where you live. If there's a gas, any sort of gas infrastructure there for fueling whatever other vehicles might be there.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I had another question from Angie asking about the status of conversations with Watertown. This is from Councilor Angie Canellis again. The status, asking about the status of conversations with the Watertown team regarding Mount Auburn Street work, because we are waiting now. National Grid is waiting to do some of the work that they're planning to do due to coordination with the MBTA. And if there's any status on that you can share with us, that would be.
I would just say that the conversations are still ongoing. I know that they're going to be meeting next week, and I'll be part of that meeting. So those continues have continued to progress. And there's another meeting on that next week to continue having those conversations. And I haven't looked at the agenda yet. I don't think the agenda's been set, but it's progressing.
Okay. The other question was about how long the trolley buses are expected to last. So we've got, the previous fleet lasted about 30 years. The current fleet is not yet even 20 years. So the question is, why the rush to replace these first before the Arbor Way project or before the Quincy garages are online? Can we keep working with these trolley buses until the wheels fall off, or until there's some until they're the end of their life cycle?
I would say there's two things to that. The first one is, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, there's several projects that are in that area that are going to require us to de-energize the overhead catenary. And then the other thing that I would say is this is part of our overall strategy to eventually replace the fleet to BEVs. And so for those reasons, the timing is opportune for us to take advantage of that. And so that's the reason we would do that. And I would also add that the longer a car, or in this case, a bus, happens to be part of our fleet, the more intensive the maintenance of that becomes and the more expensive. And so ideally, you'd want to, I think the FTA requirement is that you hold an asset for 14 years. These buses are about 17. So they're past what the FTA would consider past useful life. And so it just happens to be an opportune time to be able to replace that. We don't want, and that's, I should also mention that our ability to be able to provide more efficient service is dependent on how well those are maintained. And obviously, the longer you hold an asset, the harder it is to maintain it. So it just happens to be the timing as well.
Okay, and there was a question about the life expectancy of battery buses versus trolley buses, with the expectation that the extra weight of a battery in a battery bus would
I mean,
result
I
in
would
a,
refer, yeah, I don't know the average, I don't know the exact average lifespan of a particular BEB, but we go off of the FTA guideline on 14 years of useful life. So whatever equipment that we take in and we purchase is going to be in that field for at least 14 years. But as far as his useful life, I mean, there's a reason I think that the FTA does 14 years, and I would say it's somewhere around that vicinity. But I don't know the exact number on that particular answer.
And I just saw Councilor Sabrina Wheeler had a question about enlarging the trolley bus network. And was there any sense that homogenizing in the other direction, expanding the trolley network, further into Cambridge? We still have more wires than we're using up in Cambridge and through Huron Village. We still have wires that go up, towards Arlington. Was that considered rather than replacing it? And to what extent your thoughts are on
there's
that?
a whole host of things that we obviously consider, but we feel pretty strongly that we want to make sure that we're not having one type of vehicle in one area and another vehicle in another area. And just to make a clarification as to what I said earlier, when I talk about like homogeneous vehicles, it doesn't necessarily mean the exact same vehicle. It can mean different specs or different years of that particular vehicle. So the reason I use Southwest Airlines as an example is because although the fleet is technically homogeneous, there's different variations of that Boeing 737 that they have. And so it's kind of similar to the strategy that we're employing here.
I see.
If that makes sense.
So that kind of files in with a question that somebody asked about fleet homogeneity and with the left side doors again for the Harvard bus tunnel service. So presumably you're not looking at the same exact bus going the exact, but when you refer to that, you're referring to the same style of power, the same that's what you mean. So
that's probably a fair statement. Yeah.
Okay.
And whatever we put in that area is going to be obviously ADA accessible and meet all the codes that we're required to meet.
All right. There were a couple questions about the timing of it compared with street construction and the road work. The questions were around whether you thought the buses would potentially be ready at the time that construction was finished. Is how that timing is going to work out. Is that something that we have an idea of yet?
So as I think I referenced this in the presentation. So we expect and anticipate that the retrofit of the garage and the BEBs by December of 2023. So I'd have to check exactly on what the time frame is on those construction projects. But that is, again, that's part of the reason why we're trying to work collaboratively with the municipality and National Grid, is to make sure we get that timing right. So whatever we do is going to be part of our consideration with the timing of replacing and retrofitting that area as well.
Okay. And there was a question about the 2 miles on battery. Those are just the current hybrid buses. That's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about replacing what we have now with buses that can just run for 2 miles on battery. We're talking about full battery buses that use battery 100% for propulsion.
So you're asking, I'm sorry, because I got confused now. Could you repeat that?
I think that there was some conflation between talking about diesel hybrid buses, which are the kinds of buses that we talked about that can run for maybe 2 miles on battery, versus the buses that are proposed for the 71 and the 73, which would be powered fully by battery 100% of the time. The only question that is outstanding at this point is whether they would need a diesel backup for heat only, not for pushing the bus forward. Is that?
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. I think maybe I'm probably getting the question confused and I apologize. But I'd have to get back to you on that specifically. I don't know off the top of my head.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, what just happened? Oh, sorry, my screen had some issues. All right, so we've got a few minutes left. We have a lot of open questions. This one's been answered. What I'll do is I'll take the rest of these and I'll make sure that that we get some response to some of them as we go forward. You know, I really do appreciate your time on this. You know, I think we all share the goal of a fully electric MBTA. I want to be, you know, I think those of us who in Watertown and folks who have been around for a long time know that, you know, once you get rid of infrastructure, like the A branch, for example, it does not come back. So my goal from this is to make sure that, you know, we're going into this new situation with open eyes and with as much transparency and information sharing as possible. I appreciate, you know, all your time that you've spent with us, your openness to coming back with some of these questions. You know, I will definitely follow up with you on the open items, and we'll make sure that we have some response from the T for that. I'll tell you, I'm personally glad to hear that no final decisions have been made on the buses, so that we can still continue the conversation on that as we go forward. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of folks and input on that. I think there'll be some good opportunities to learn more about the specifics of the technology, because I do think that there's a real opportunity here, you know, to do something that will help move the MBTA forward in its electrification plan. And we just need to make sure that we're all able to do that. And I'll pass it to the Representative Rogers and Senator Brownsberger and Jehlen if you want to have some last thoughts.
Hey, I'll just quickly offer one point of information that was raised during the course, and that will save you, Angel, from having to dig something out that might be hard to get back to. I can tell you how much it costs to take down the catenary for the project under Pello Road when they took down the catenary on the 73. The estimate, I don't know what it finally cost, but the estimate was $1.7 million. And in that context, the project for Pello Road had originally been bid out without removing that. All the contractors came in with much higher bids because they needed special equipment to work underneath it. And so MassDOT decided they did want to take down the catenaries, and that was the number that they were talking about. So round numbers, $2 million to remove and reinstall the catenaries. That does not cover any operational cost differences.
Thank you. I didn't know that, but now I do.
All right, Senator Jehlen, you want to have any last words?
I'm just going to say that this is brand new to me. I'm very, very glad that you did this, and we'll be glad to be kept in touch on what happens both here and in the rest of the system. Thank you.
Love the plants.
All right, and Representative Rogers, the North Cambridge garage is in your district, so I'll let you close us out.
Well, very informative. Really appreciate the presentation. Obviously, there's a lot of questions, a lot of good questions, and I'm happy to hear that Angel, as a representative of the T, is committed to an ongoing dialogue and answering those questions, and really appreciate the presentation, and it's very informative and helpful. And I think the participants probably learned a lot as well. So thank you.
Happy to
Great.
do it.
So thank you for this. You've put your contact info in the chat, and Emerson, you can put that back in so everybody has that. I imagine there will be some questions after this. Feel free to contact my office. If you can put my information in there too, put my cell phone on there too, Emerson. Feel free to contact me. I'm happy to be a point of contact on this. I will say that as this proceeds, I hope that this is just the first conversation of a couple as we go through this, because I think there were definitely some questions about, some of the more technical aspects of what we might, what writers might experience in the future, particularly regarding the greenhouse gas profile of not just the buses themselves, but as we draw more electricity from the grid, what that looks like. So I think that will be something that we're going to want to watch as we go forward. I know that on the current situation, we do have diesel fill-in buses from time to time, and as somebody who lives right off the 71, and I know a lot of people also live off the 71 and the 73, and that I see that we notice when there's diesel versus when there's an electric. So keeping our routes fully electric is something that I think is a high priority on the constituents that I talk to on our list. So I'm hopeful that we can continue these conversations, and I really thank you for your time this evening.
All right. Bye, folks.
Take care. Bye-bye.